Can we confirm that they are correct? Does everybody else agree with those?
Chairman, I think there's nobody against that decision, so I think you can take that.
Lovely, thank you. Be helpful if you could let me know. Thank you. We'll now go to item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any?
Yeah, I'd just like to declare that I'm a licensed London taxi driver.
Thank you.
So, Chairman, just to be very clear, Councillor Smith isn't a TDC licensed taxi driver and therefore can continue to participate in them.
Thank you. We'll now go to item 4, questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38.
None received, Madam Chairman.
So we'll move on to item 5, which is the miscellaneous licensing subcommittee.
And Chairman, just to say that the role of the committee is to receive these minutes. So if somebody can just move that we receive them, then that would be assistance.
Thank you, Councillor Casey. Lovely. So we'll then move on to item 6, which is the premises personal licences subcommittee. If we can receive and note those, that would be helpful, committee. Yep, Councillor Casey. Thank you, committee. We're now going to move to item 10 on the agenda first. So we'll go to that item, which is the report of the Corporate Director, Operations and Delivery, A4, review of the fees and charges for caravan site licensing. It's on pages 85 to 100.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just give the committee a brief sort of introduction to this item. So you may or may not be aware that the council has an obligation, statutory obligation, to issue licences to certain caravan sites in the district, in particular mobile home sites. So these are sort of fixed sites where people can live year round, and it's their main dwelling. So this is the first time we brought this particular fee proposal to the committee. This is following a review of how we set fees and charges across the authority. So previously we've set the fees and charges through delegation to officers in consultation with portfolio holder, and then a sort of approval at full council. Whereas now we're bringing these particular fees to this licensing committee for approval. So what we're asking in the report is for the committee to endorse and approve the fees and charges that we've been charging for the previous financial year. So this is 2022-23 financial year, and then the proposed fees set out in Appendix B or column B of Appendix A be approved. So these are the fees that we're going to charge for this financial year. And then the third recommendation is that the delegation to myself, Assistant Director for Housing and Environment, to publish those fees in accordance with the relevant legislative provisions. One thing we'd like to do is actually come back to the committee or run a separate training session in due course, so you can provide you with a bit more information about the licensing of caravan sites. And also the previous meeting we came to you with a report in relation to animal establishments and beauty treatment licensing. We'll probably do a training session around all three of those in the same kind of session, just to give you more information and background to those kind of activities of the council. And that will then help you when we come in future with future reports around setting fees and that kind of thing. So any questions, we'll happily take those.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask, because I used to own a home on Valley Farm, the 15% increase, is that directly to the park that will be paying that, and then that will be passed on to the caravan owners?
Sorry, the 15% is directly to the park. Yeah, that would we've put it up this year so that
it's in line with all our other charges. Basically, yes, that's it. There are annual fees that form part of this report, which we charge the park for our enforcement duties and our inspection regime. Then that can be passed on to the residents of a residential park. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, obviously there's quite a few rental parks, Valley Farm and Highfields and others. Does that apply to them sort of parks as well?
No, they're holiday sites. This just covers residential mobile sites, protected sites, which are
Sackett's Grove.
Yeah, 365 days a year occupation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from councillors? So if we look at the recommendations, obviously would like you to endorse the current and the proposed ones that are on here on 1, 2 and 3. Would anybody like to propose them? Yeah, can we propose en bloc?
You can, Chairman, yeah, if somebody wants to move them all 3 at once.
Are you happy to move all 3, or would you like to do them individually, or has anybody got any?
Chairman, if it says, I took Councillor Smith's recommendation or moving of all 3. So
yeah.
If there's a seconder for all 3, then I think Councillor Wiggins is seconded for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Wiggins.
Okay, thank you.
All in favour? Please. Was there anybody against? Councillor Casey. Back to item 7 on the agenda, which is the report of the Deputy Chief Executive. A1, various licensing provisions, applications approved under delegated powers in Q1 2023/24. It's on pages 13 to 18.
Chairman, I think the licensing manager will take you through that report.
Thank you, Chair. The first report here just outlines a number of licences that the department have dealt with over the last quarter. As agreed at the last committee, we're now going to do figures in quarter for yourself. As you can see, with regards to the drivers and that, they sort of outline nice sort of steady flow now going through. On page 15 and 16, I've attached some information that have come through from the Department of Transport regarding the recent survey. It just outlines some of the figures over the years, just for information. And then with reviewing the policies, and I've just outlined there the policies we've got in place, when they've been adopted, when they're being expired, and when we're reviewing for submission to the committee.
Thank you, Michael. Have the committee got any questions on those figures at all? Before I take any questions, I'd just like to thank you for your work on that, Michael. Obviously, in the previous committee with some of us members, it is helpful to look at some of those figures sort of across the country to see, obviously, there was that real dip during COVID. I'm sticking now because it had become quite concerning to us. So it's good to see, and can I thank you for your work on that? Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Wiggins.
Yes, I was just wondering what temporary insurance vehicles issued meant. Does this mean that they haven't got full insurance for those vehicles on page 15? Or what, please?
temporary insurance vehicles, they're a temporary vehicle when the actual Hackney carriage or private hire vehicle has been involved in an accident and they've been given a temporary vehicle from the insurance company.
Thank you.
No other questions, so we'll move to the recommendation, which I believe is for us to note the information set out in the report. So take that as noted. So we'll then move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the report of the Deputy Chief Executive, A2, development of a comprehensive and cohesive taxi private hire policy, which is page 19 to 82. This was work that was carried forward from the previous committee before the election. A lot of work has gone into this, so it's obviously bringing it forward to the new committee to hopefully carry this forward, and we'll let you hear the report and then ask questions if you have any. Thank you.
Chairman, just to commence that, as you were indicating to the committee, and it's set out in the minutes of your last meeting, there was has been a lengthy process of just making sure that the views in relation to policy matters on taxi and private hire licensing are set out in a cohesive policy. So that work has been undertaken. It has been informed by one piece of consultation. As you quite rightly say, that work took us up to the elections, and it's important that the new council, following the election, has ownership of that, believes and is in the policies that ultimately may be in the comprehensive policy that you'll be ultimately approving. So the intention is to take you through that this evening, offer you the opportunity to look at the attachment to the report, which sets out all of those policy decisions. It is going out for consultation, so this is not the end of the process. And what we intend to do shortly is Michael will also just point out some particular areas in relation to that policy that we just want to make sure that we've got the feeling of the committee right before we go out to consultation. Once you've heard what Michael is going to take you through, we just will need to talk through whether those areas of policy go out alongside the statement of licensing that you've got in front of you, so sits alongside it. So you're not committed to anything. It just is making sure that when you make your ultimate decision about what is in that policy, you have it informed by the views of consultees. And quite rightly, licensees are an important part of that process that we hear from them. I've almost finished at that stage, but just to say, in talking with the committee's chairman, one of the things that we are keen to do during that consultation period is to have an informal opportunity for members of this committee to meet with, interact with, exchange views on licensees. So we will seek to bring together a group of licensees, potentially in here, with members of this committee as part of that consultation process. So yes, there will be a sort of asking for views to be expressed. There will be that opportunity for written responses, and we want to encourage that, but there will also be an opportunity for that interchange to occur directly between the committee and licensees, just to support the consultation process. I'm going to hand over to Michael at this stage to take you through a presentation that will be shown on our screens and on the live stream at home.
Thank you, Chair. So just to cover a few items that we just want to have a look through alongside this. So the first item is the identity and signage of taxis and private hire vehicles. The intention is to try and make the taxis more noticeable to members of the public. At current, as you can see there, I've got two different plates there. We've got a green plate and a yellow plate. The Hackney Carriage, which is a taxi that can sit on the taxi ranks and be pulled over at any time, they have to have a top light on, meter, and the green authority plate. They're also allowed door signs. Private hire vehicles are pre-booked. At current, they're not allowed top lights, but they have to display a yellow sign on the back of the vehicle, and they are also permitted for door signs. During the previous consultation, 53% of the members of the public, taxi drivers that come back to us during the consultation agreed that it would stay the same. So I just wanted to clarify that with members and see if they're happy with that, or if they've got any suggestions going forward for the consultation.
Just echoing what Michael has said, is we've got the rear plates on licensed vehicles, either green or yellow, and a roof sign. The roof sign is not prescribed, so can be quite small, and other ones can be larger. And whether you want to think about stipulating a size of roof sign, it doesn't say. It's licensed by Tendring District Council, the roof sign, currently. A number of authorities around the country do require that to be put on there. So whether you want to see something by way of the roof sign adjusted. The alternative, and it was discussed at the last meeting, but again, we've had the election in between, is whether you want to adopt, let's say, a single colour of vehicle for Hackney Carriage. Hackney Carriages. So a number of authorities have a set livery. I think Brighton have got white and green bonnet and boot. Other authorities it's a single colour. So a number of Hackney Carriage and private hire drivers, Hackney Carriage drivers and owners will say if you put a particular livery, let's say that different colour boot and bonnet, that will add additional costs to the vehicle. If it's a single colour and a common colour, not a Nottingham green, which again I've heard them say that was a particular shade of green that you wouldn't normally get on a standard manufactured vehicle, so therefore added cost to them obtaining those vehicles. But if it's a standard colour, then that potentially would help distinguish Hackney Carriages from private hire vehicles. But we just want to make sure that whilst you might want to rule out the bonnet and boot different colour livery that we've got captured, do you want to keep it as it is so that a Hackney Carriage can be literally any colour and a private hire vehicle can be any colour, or do you want to, over time, not insisting on tomorrow, but over time, move to a situation where there is a single colour for Hackney Carriages, so that improves the distinction between Hackney Carriages and private hire vehicles. So that's the purpose of raising this with you, is to make sure we've got it clear what your intentions are. If you are minded to explore that, then I would suggest that we put something into the consultation that we're putting out there to ask for views. Otherwise, if you're minded not to go anywhere near that as a subject, then that would be useful to hear back from you this evening.
Any views from councillors on that? Councillor Casey first.
Well, the subject at the moment is green. I would go for a green. Thank you. That's all.
Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, at the moment with cost of living and things like that, I'd probably keep it the same as it is. But I don't know how many years the taxis before they've got to change. So maybe in the future, as the new taxis are coming in, they could fit in line with a new sort of colour and look at that going forward. I don't know what anyone else thinks. Adrian's probably the man for that one.
Councillor Smith.
So it doesn't have to be a resprayed vehicle. It can just be a vinyl wrap, and that's not overly expensive. And that would give us the colour green. It would probably be. I'm not going to guess the prices, but they're not overly expensive, and it would have the added benefit for the driver that the stone chips, as they're driving up and down the motorways, wouldn't impact so much on their own paintwork. So there are positives to it, and it's not overly expensive in the great scheme of things, and it would be an immediate identifier.
Any other questions from any other councillors? I'd just like to, well, as chairman, put my view. I know from before when it was brought up at last meetings when I wasn't in the chair, same as Councillor Thompson, I've got concerns at present with the cost of living crisis. You know, any cost is sometimes unaffordable. You know, people are just keeping their heads above water, and I think whilst it could be in the consultation, I would be happy for them to continue as they are. If members want it put in there, you know, to ask the question, but see what the outcome is. I don't know what other members' views.
I think that's all we're looking for. Is if you're happy to see it in as part of the consultation, we can put it in. It's, you know, if I encapsulate what I've heard, I mean, potentially a single colour of green for Hackney carriages. You know, you've got to choose one colour. You might as well choose that colour, and that in recognition of where we are, that we're not looking for existing licensed vehicles to be replaced now with a green vehicle. What we're saying is at the next replacement that we would be looking for them to. So that could be 13, 15 years down the line or something, so as it currently stands. So hopefully we're out of the cost of living crisis by then.
Councillor Smith.
I think the only problem with having the vehicles as a single colour is the resale value. So if it was just a livery, you know, you could just peel them off. You haven't actually sprayed a specific colour. Tricky selling them.
So are we minded to add the question into the consultation and see what comes back? Because obviously it will come back to committee for a decision. So it's just asking the question and people's views on what the drivers think, what members of the public think. I think it's quite healthy. We've all got different views on the committee, so I think it would be interesting to see the different views coming in and ask the question. Councillor Casey.
And looking at costs and everything, as somebody said, this could happen 13, 14 years down the line. I suggest green because I still think it's a good colour, but I would go with costs as well. And if we stay as we are at this moment in time, eventually it will come to a change. So I would go for green, but I would also go, if you wanted multicolour, until that time comes along.
Thank you, Chairman. And so I'm getting that you're happy for that to go in as a question, and we can point out, you know, picking up on what Councillor Smith has said, which is other colours could be licensed, but obviously they would need that wrap in order to make the visibility of that vehicle accord with the single colour, if that was a choice that they wanted to, for the resale value to be maintained.
That's really helpful because I think people can then look and they've got that information, you know, and that's what they need, isn't it? So, yeah, that's good.
Just want to move on to accessibility now. So we have a mixed fleet at the moment. wheelchair accessible vehicles as well as normal cars. At the moment, we're required to submit information on a weekly basis. So drivers that they have to take assisted dogs if required, unless they've got an exemption certificate. The medical exemption certificates are only issued by the licensing authority, and they must provide the necessary evidence to us on that. So licensing authorities have also been requested if they've got any wheelchair accessible vehicles that they have like an incentive. Currently, those vehicles can be licensed for 15 years, and members agreed at the last one to go out for consultation on this for 17 years. So it sort of gives them an extra couple of years on top of what they've got already. With regards to the seating, we license that depending on the vehicle registration certificate. Each person is counted for regardless of the age, and taxis can only be licensed for the number of seats and seat belts available. At current, our policy says that any vehicle that is over four passengers, like multi vehicles, they have to have a boot button release, notices explaining this, and release tags on the seats. Is that something that members would like to carry on, or would they like that sort of question put out to for consultation going forward?
Anything from councillors? If I could come in there, I think it's something I can recall this being brought in at the time, and I think if it's something that we've got in place at the moment and it is for customer safety, I wouldn't see any reason to remove it whilst we've already got it in place, because I think passenger safety obviously is what we're all here for, and I personally would like to see that continue. I wouldn't like to see something that's in place removed. It's already there. So any views from any other councillors, or are you happy to stay with what we've got on that? Okay, yeah. Is that okay, Michael? Thank you.
If we just move on to the enforcement and points-based system, currently we have a warning protocol in place for the drivers, owners and operators. That's been in place since 2009. If drivers, operators or vehicle owners receive 3 written warnings for clear breaches or traffic offences within a rolling 12 months, they are brought to the miscellaneous licensing subcommittee to determine whether they're fit and proper and what action, if any, to be taken. We recently had a committee where 2 drivers actually came to them, and that was mainly for failing to produce documents on time. On the screen there, you've got a list. I've put together a short list, but it does continue. Just the top 10 that we bring drivers to the committee for. So at the moment, it's 3 warnings over the 12-month period. But many councils have gone to more of a points-based system. And I just was interested in the committee's opinion whether this is something that we should be moving more towards, rather than if you do get your three letters within that 12 months, bringing them to committee.
Any views from councillors on this?
Sorry, so this has been in place since 2009. To change it if it's accepted.
Yeah, I'd like, if I could just come in there, I actually would like to see it changed, or at least the question go out there. I think over the years, seeing how many people sometimes we have before us, and I think for the officers, I think it would be perhaps helpful for them. Obviously, it comes to us at committee, but I think the point system, I think, could be looked into, at least looked into, because I think that change sometimes is needed. We plod along, you know, and we have had a committee meeting and people come before us, and I think if we could change them getting here, that would be a better way forward. Any other views? Yep, Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Chair. I just wonder if we've got any examples of currently working point systems that we could actually have a look at before we took any decisions about that.
Chairman, we can certainly bring that to your attention, and during the consultation period, have the opportunity of expanding on the suggestion, because what we're asking you to do is wholesale change the very nature by which we enforce. But I think the substantive issue here is this. Currently, it's just 3 warning letters, irrespective of the nature, let's say, of the offence. What we're trying to articulate, and obviously we can do better at that, is that each offence is different and will accord to a different level of point system. And I think that's what we're trying to get towards, is saying the more problematic ones, like I would suggest not reporting an accident following that, because that potentially means that people are being carried in unsafe vehicles following that accident. So there are certain things which I think it's important that we apply a higher tariff of points to, and that should therefore involve a distinction that means that those ones get potentially in front of you quicker than somebody with a less of an issue, but potentially could trigger 3 warning letters in a 12-month period. And that's probably not, I'm probably not doing a very good job at articulating that, but hopefully you get the impression. But yes, we can, during the consultation period, try and bring something to you to try and show you how that works in practice and how potentially it differs from where we are currently with the warning letters.
Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Casey?
I think there's some very serious ones up there, but looking at some of those, really verbally, for not showing smoking sign, you know, after 3 warnings, you're going to get a charge somewhere along the line. Some of those are really, what do you call it, I think over the top myself. Basically, at the end of the day, you speak to someone and say, look, you know, put a sign up there. I'm sure they will, but there's some of them, and I don't know, these things they smoke now, I don't smoke. I'm told they're safe to smoke. But there again, you know, I think there's a lot of serious ones there. I think 2 or 3 of those really could be looked at. Just a word in somebody's ear from enforcement, I'm sure is the answer to that. Yeah.
Any other questions? So I take, could we have some more information on the points back to the committee, or would that, is that going to affect the obviously it's a consultation, so
I would hope that the committee would authorise us to include some questions around moving from where we are currently to a points-based system. Yeah. But you can certainly record, and I would, whether you want to move that as a decision, or I can certainly give you that assurance, we will bring back to you some more detail on this before you make a final decision as to whether to stick with the current warning system, or to move to a points-based system, and what that points-based system might look like, so that you can be assured, as Councillor Casey has said, that actually the points do match the crime in that sense.
Yeah, that sounds sensible. What do councillors think? Because obviously it's a consultation, it's not a decision. Are you happy for the question to be asked? And obviously it's going to come back to us before any decisions made on the way forward. So it wouldn't be implemented without us agreeing to it anyway. So would you be happy, or would you like it left out? Yeah. Anyone against that? No?
Chairman, I think if we can move to the, with those additions to the extent that you've authorised them, to the actual draft policy, that it starts on page 27 in your papers at page 20. At the very top there is the recommendation, and that is that you authorise the draft policy as set out for consultation purposes. So we will explicitly now, subject to your agreement to it, to that recommendation, go out to consultation and bring the results of that consultation back to you. And then we've, as I said earlier, we've added to that now by those couple of extra bits. And we undertake, obviously, to bring back particularly the points-based system for you to have a look at.
Councillor Casey? Lovely. Do we have a seconder? Yeah. All in favour? Yep, that's everybody. Thanks. We now move on to item 9, which is the report of the Deputy Chief Executive, A3 Tendering Community Safety Action Days for licensing on pages 83-84.
So, Chair, this is just here really to inform the committee. If you feel as though it's important that you are aware of activities, including this sort of enforcement level activity. So the report is before you by way of a briefing note, and Michael will just talk through what is set out there.
So this is just an outline. We had a couple of days, licensing officers went out with the community safety team, Essex Police, the road policing officers and environmental agency. Quite a successful couple of days. On the Wednesday, we checked over 19 vehicles, issued 3 warnings and 1 referral. On the Friday, a number of premises got visit, nighttime economy with a number of other partners. 1 referral for further enforcement. A taxi had an out-of-date plate that was taken off the road there and then and dealt with. And 100 drink covers were handed out to pubs to help with the drink spiking campaign. The licensing enforcement officer has seen those ones with the warnings since this, and I'm pleased to say that they're all complied now with those warnings.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions from members? No. I'd just like to say on behalf of the committee, it's really appreciated to have this report, and it's good to see you out there because I think the public do like to see a little bit more visual, and it's reassuring. Obviously, you're linking up with the other agencies, which is really good to see you all working together, and I'd like to thank you for doing that for us as a council. Thank you. Right, so we're now, I would like to, if that's okay with everybody, move item 11 and 12 on block.
And Councillor Wiggins has seconded that. So is it the agreement of the committee that items 11 and 12 be accepted?
Thank you. So the date of the next scheduled meeting will be held on a date to be decided, which is the 16th of October.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the 16th of October, we'll send a calendar invite out to you on that basis, and obviously the outcome of the consultation will come to that meeting.
Lovely. Thank you, members. Conclude the meeting.
you.